Yeah, we're just going to kind of roll into this, Quinn. I think 99% of people are going to know who you are, but for the one person who doesn't, if you can just give us a quick hello, quick intro, and then we'll jump into the training.
Hey, yeah, my name's Quinn Simmons. I ride for Lidl Trek. This is now my sixth year on the world tour. Not really a super specialist rider, just do a bit of everything, and yeah, it's good to talk to you.
Well, man, we're so glad that you're here. And I think after watching you at the tour, it's funny to hear you say not a super specialist rider. I think just your ability to ride flat out is something that everybody's seen on the world scale. You know, we heard you talking about that after you won nationals in 2023, I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you had made the comment of like, I knew no one could ride as flat out as I could at the end of this race, and you took off and won. And it was just a beast mode victory. Before we kind of jump in at sessions that we see you do on Strava that we might think move the needle, like how do you see your training? What's really important to you to get you at this level where you're riding just incredibly well at the World Tour?
Yeah, I'm one of these guys that recovers quite well, so I can train quite hard day in day out, and I think I don't have a super crazy peak sprint or a super crazy hour, and my watts per kilo is really nothing special, but as long as I feel right and I take care of the recovery, I can go day in, day out, both in training and in the race. And I typically actually get better with fatigue. I had it took a few years to figure it out that like when I was resting a lot into races, I was actually performing worse. So I'm one of these guys you'll see go do like 2 days out from a race. I always have 6, 7 hour training still, and I just can keep building throughout the season. And a few times, of course, has gone over the limit with finding how deep we can push, but typically, I recover well, and that's probably my biggest skill set is just the fatigue resistance.
Landry, why don't you jump in, man? Because you had some questions about the recovery from these weeks and the sessions and also the fueling. So I know you got a couple ones to hit Quinn with.
Yeah, what do you think is like, obviously genetically, but do you have anything specifically that you do off the bike that you think helps you recover better than other riders?
I mean, really, you say there with the genetics is probably where I have to give it the best credit. I see this with my dad. We're just the similar. You don't, whether it's skiing or on the bike or something. I see him get better after 5 hours, and for me, I feel the same way. But then with the fueling, also I can just intake really a lot. Like there's not really a limit to how much I can have food wise. I actually have to be careful not to go too much is a bigger struggle for me. I'm not, you hear guys complaining that they can't eat enough or that like we're at the taking food on the ride and they're struggling to get enough in the race. Whereas like I have to control in the race not to overeat. So for sure that helps.
So we see you stopping at the gas stations all the time, grabbing ice cream and all that. Do you have like a specific carb target that you usually hit on your training sessions?
When I'm training at altitude, I almost never go under 120 grams an hour. And I mean, even at that, you feel that you can still be quite empty. So a lot of times I can even go over 120. But yeah, that's also not. I don't purely just eat carbs on the ride. I do like the normal gas station food. I think for me, I feel better, and even in the race, where 90%, okay, you do the right thing and you take the gels and all that, but a lot of times you see me in the break or something, I'll go back to the car and I'll have like pre-put a candy bar or something in there. And I mean, you were speaking of the nationals. I had my dad on the side of the road with a few candy bars for the last couple hours. But yeah, for the most part, it's I really emphasize going full high carb a lot, especially when I'm at altitude.
When did you notice
What
that the
about the
altitude? Sorry, Landry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, what about the Diet Coke? I'm just curious as about the purpose behind that.
Well, I like the caffeine and I like the taste, but then like a normal cola is say 200 calories or whatever for a big one. So you could have a cola zero and a candy bar.
Yeah.
You got to eat something also, no? Because I mean, we're tracking everything down to the calorie, and if you're trying to lose weight, it's you spend a lot of time hungry, so any extra volume you can have in the stomach is welcome.
For sure.
When you say tracking, so you tracking macros of things you're eating off the bike as well?
Yeah, full every. I don't eat anything without it going on the scale first.
Really? Okay. When did you start doing that? And I think, what do you see as, this might sound like a dumb question. What's the benefit to you there? And are there any drawbacks of like relationship with food? Or I'd love to hear about this.
Yeah, I started on and off just like myself, throughout the years playing a bit with it at training camps, but then I started actually with a nutritionist 2 years ago. And I think we talk about the negative relationship with food, which for sure all of us are definitely a little loopy with the food, but then again, I mean, it's our job, so you can't really complain too much. Of course, it's not going to be the most healthy thing ever to be weighing your apple, but at the end of the day, we have a weight we have to make, and we have a certain amount of carbs you have to hit to perform. And it's not much that we do in training is super healthy long term, but it's 10, 15 years of your life, and you kind of just have to suck up that it sucks and go for high performance.
I love that because I think that's a really something that amateurs can use. Of a lot of people don't know what they're consuming during the day, and then if they have a bad workout, that could be a key session. They're just not fueled for it, and it's like, well, you don't even know how many carbs you had, how much gas was in the tank. So to hear you saying that you're actually taking the time to do this might motivate some people to, just brush up and learn more about what they're really putting in their body.
And if it's a key hard session, I'll do actually exactly what I take in the race, from breakfast all the way through the fueling, just to super super used to it. I know exactly my race breakfast. I know the timing. I know the timing before I get on the bike, and then you start with the normal fueling program once you're riding.
Can you hit us with that secret meal?
For me, I'm big on the cornflakes, so it'll be like depending it changes. You have to change a bit based on the length of the training, but yeah, if it's a hard ride, I aim for like 4 grams per kilo of carbs before the training starts. That's broken up into normally a pretty big breakfast, and then again a little snack right before I get on the bike. Because if I don't do that, I'm a little hungry when I start. And then I don't like to take drink mix because I get too hungry if I'm just drinking calories. So typically it's just electrolyte in the bottles, and then eat something of 40 grams every 20 minutes on the bike.
What kind of electrolytes are you using?
Mix of everything. We have some from Enervit that I use when I'm with the team, and even just whatever's around the house. But just really focusing on getting high sodium, especially when we're here at altitude where it's super hot.
Would you ever just go just salt in the bottle and be like, I'm good with that? Or is it a mix of some sort?
That might taste a little heinous, no? Before, when I was neoprone junior and I like didn't have enough money to buy this stuff, I tried doing like salt and lemon juice, and it wasn't it.
Wasn't it? All right, fair enough. So training sessions then, what do you see as, you see some on the calendar, you're just like licking your chops, like, I love this session. Like this, you like doing it, but also you feel like it makes you rip in. Is there a few of those that come to mind?
I have one that I've done basically since I was a junior, and then now with my new coach in the World Tour, it's basically, I mean, whether you call it Zone 2 or Fat Max or whatever you want to call it, it's basically I'll go and do 4.5 hours. For me, it's 340 watts, where it's just like right where you're pushing, right on that fat limit, and then finish it with 2 sets of 30-30s or some 1 minute all out efforts. So the idea is, you get 5,500 kilojoules in the legs, and then you do a bit the race simulation. And once I can nail that, then I know I'm going to be good in the race.
Is there a lead up to that? When you say once you can nail it, is there like a progression to that, or or is it just like as you're coming out of base training, you start ramping it up a little bit, and then you're like, okay, I'm ready to go?
Well, I start my winter always in Arizona at sea level, and so I can normally do it quite okay there. And then I do a 3-week altitude camp. And by the time I've built the altitude power up to be the same as the sea level, what I was doing at sea level, then it's when I know it's pretty good.
Sick. Landry, you've got some sessions that you saw that were pretty buck wild. Do you want to jump in with those and see if Quinn has some comments on them?
Yeah, I've been following Ricky Bobby on Strava for quite some time. I used to race with a lot of the Lux kids that I remember. You were supposed to show up at Gila one year. I think it was 2019. I was really glad that you didn't, because I saw you on the start list.
Well, I was supposed to do Gila, but I had won too much, so Lux wouldn't let me come because they wanted to let some other kids win.
No, for real. That team was like, would have been illegal if you were there with everybody on that. So training sessions, one that we see you do a lot is like these 10-minute low cadence. What do you think what is the purpose behind that, and what do you think it helps you with personally?
Yeah, it's just that back to the fatigue resistance, and you get, especially in the zone that I do it in, is like through lactate testing and metabolic testing, that like I start them at like around 360 watts and build them to about 390, which is where our team doctor has determined that I have a bit of a weakness. So it's a nice way to work on that, and then also by doing it low cadence, you just work on that efficiency. Especially, I mean, if you see us on a big Grand Tour day, if you're 5 hours in and you have to get up an hour and a half climb, I think it's good to have all those different muscle groups worked a bit, because it's not that we race fast, but sometimes you're not always going 50K an hour.
So is this like, would you say, is there like a physiologic, we talk a lot about like fiber type conversions. Is there something about like lowering VLA max because you're more anaerobic, or is it more just about kind of the mental aspect and more sort of like the race specificity?
Well, I mean, in the end, it's true, you have to train all the different zones and all the different muscle fibers. And I mean, it's hard to explain, super scientifically. You'd have to ask my doctor for that. But for me, the feeling I have is that it truly is a different effort. If I'm doing 7 by 10 minutes at, like, say, an average of 380 at 50 RPMs, it feels much different than that exact same workout with a free cadence.
Right. Yeah, that's
In the
what.
same way, we sometimes also do like the similar power, but at high cadence. Because if it's up to me, I would just ride 75 RPMs
Right.
everywhere.
Yeah, that's something I always preach with the low cadence training, is like, if you do this interval at 50 RPM, imagine how easy it's going to feel when you get to the race and you're able to ride at whatever cadence you want.
And I found also, by doing a lot of that when I start my threshold, if I do a lot through the winter before I start my threshold training, then the like free cadence intervals at 420, whatever, they feel a lot easier, because you have, that base of strength. It's also just it's a lot of workload in that zone that I know I need to work on. And yeah, it's something I've always done, and I like it.
Landon, before you jump into the next one, when you talked about strength, and Quinn mentioned this off camera, if he's going to be lifting a little bit later, can you talk about strength training? Is it important to you? Is it worth your time? What are you doing in the gym? And is it all year round? Is it just a certain time of the year? What's going on there?
I used to do a lot of strength work, and actually, to be honest, this year I completely stopped doing any lifting or nothing. I just do core now. I don't know. I think I spent so much time doing deadlifts and squats and everything, and I never really felt anything on the bike. And I felt that it was taking away a bit from the training on the bike. And it's also just one more mental stress that you have to go to the gym at the end of the day and lift this thing a bunch of times, and I didn't like it. So now I do a lot of core and stability, just because I've had lower back problems before. But yeah, for strength work, all I do is core now.
Okay. Didn't expect that. But what's the core routine? Like, how long are you doing? Like 10 minutes? Or are you in there for like half an hour?
It'll be half an hour, 45 minutes, and then obviously mix in some like stability for the knees and hip, and a bit of like activation type stuff in there. But yeah, no, I'm not in the gym doing like 5x5 deadlifts anymore. I threw that out this year.
All right. Landry, what's the next one up?
This one is the one I'm really curious about that I see you do. Is you might have even done this one yesterday, the 5x6 at like 400 ish into the fat max. What is the benefit do you feel for that?
Yeah, especially when I'm at home at altitude now. So when I do that, it's the 400 on a flat road is it's not all out, but you're definitely loading the legs, and then you go into the fat max. And for me, it's the same feeling of you have a big fight for the breakaway, and then you have to start immediately chopping off. And like, once, that's another one of those workouts you're mentioning. Like, if I can do that and then go into the fat max comfortably, then I know I start to be in good shape, because at the end of the day, especially like in the bigger races, the classics or the grand tours, like, it's a lot of load by the time the group does go. And if you can't do your efforts at the end of this 5,000 calories, they don't really mean nothing. It's nice to have a cool 5-minute power, but it's more or less useless if you can't do it with the 4.5 hours already in the legs. And I think that trains that a bit.
When you were coming up, and I mean, you just rose through the ranks so quickly, this question you might not remember back, but like when you were younger and races were shorter, and maybe you're doing a Cat 1 race and it's 3 hours, it's obviously different load in the legs. What was your mindset still in the same place of like, I just want people to ride hard, or is this something you developed as you got to the world tour and like, oh, dude, this is what's going to make me really good?
Yeah, well, actually, my last year as a junior, I was coached by Jim Miller for the national team, and I told him already, from the beginning of the year that the goal was to go straight to the world tour. And we all the training was kind of, I mean, obviously we had the goals of the races, but that was in the back of my mind always to be ready to make that step up. And so I think my training really hasn't changed too much. It just scales up every year with the load you can handle. And I mean, the ride that actually got me the offer from Trek was my ride at Leadville, and already then as a 18-year-old I was doing a world tour level of power there. So I think it's kind of always been the focus, and it's I've always known I'm good at it. So that's we kind of capitalize on that.
I love that. Landry, you got a savage banger.
Okay, so the last one was these like short anaerobic, I think 30-second repeats that I've seen you do. You don't do them very often, but what do you feel like what does that help you with the most?
Are you like just like a 30-30 session, or which one?
It was back in May.
It was a D2, or like it had a funny name to it.
Yeah, it was back in May. It was like 3 minutes at 500, and then you just did reps up a hill for like 30 seconds at like 700 watts.
I was I was typically, so at sea level I'll do a VO2 session of it's like 5 times 3 minutes, and then 4 times 3, and then 4 times 2, and then at altitude I drop it down to 4 times 3, 4 times 2, 4 times 1. And I think the one you're looking at there, I just I imploded on the 2-minute ones and then like changed it to like 30-30s at the end. So really it was supposed to be a bit more than that. But yeah, typically here I'll do, like I said, the 3, 2, and 1 minute VO2s, and you basically just cook yourself so hard on the 3 minutes that everything after that is just hanging on.
Do you feel like those VO2 sessions help you at all in that weak spot that you're talking about, like the 390 watts, even though you're going obviously shorter on those, but just the maximal aerobic stuff helps in this, like, I'm laying on the gas for 30 minutes right now? Or is that just totally different?
I think it's more like that final effort, because I don't really believe in these like paced VO2s, or like where you're really targeting the specific VO. Like if it's that session, the idea is to finish every interval falling off the bike, and I think it's more to that like final kick in the end. Especially once I get down to the 1 minute ones at the end, it's just as much as I have, turn down the hill, do it again.
What's your mental approach for a workout like that? Like what do you think of before the session and maybe even during the session that just allows you to just go in the box?
I mean, to be honest, I'll be more nervous that morning than I am before a lot of races, actually. But yeah, it's one of those days where, like I said, I'll do like a full race breakfast, full caffeine, everything. You just really get into it, and when you're riding well and you're hitting the numbers, and like if I'm at sea level and I'm riding them all over 540, 550, you get the morale boost of like you can feel when you're good, and when you hit the last block and you're still able to really push them and dig deep, it's more just thinking, because I only do this 2 weeks before the races come, so it's that final test to see if you're ready.
When you have multiple big races throughout the year, we were kind of talking about like these peaks, you're getting ready for the Tour de France, whatever else, whether your coach or team is like, hey man, Quinn, we really need you on point for this. How do you balance that? So as you just said, hey, 2 weeks before I'm going to start hitting these key sessions, is it just I'm trying to go all out February through September, or do you have certain times of the year? And like, does that change your training? And maybe it's just kind of on the fly. That's part of being a pro athlete. You have to adapt with different requests from the team.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for me and the places I have in the team now, I unless I get hurt or sick, I more or less know my schedule already in December, and we always structure it. The first peak would be for Strada, and then yeah, I would obviously continue through the Ardennes on that same form, and then I take a week off. Then you build again for the tour, take a week off after the tour, and now the same build back up for the worlds. For me, I'm not one of these guys who can be super good for long periods of time. I'm quite good at picking a goal and being fit for 3 weeks, but yeah, I definitely need a lot of that, like really build up, but then take the time off.
I love that. That's what do you think is from there's so much information on training and racing now, like what's kind of underrated that you just think people are not paying attention to?
I think I think the biggest thing is you just have to train. I think especially these American quote pros, they don't really accept that, like, I mean, it's 28, 30 hours on the bike in the week, and you just have to do it week in, week out. There's no, oh, I have this goal race a month from now. It's time to do a big block. That big block starts in November, and you just have to be able to repeat it week after week. And I think it's the biggest factor is just doing the work. I think you you spend the winter in Tucson, or I do, and you see a lot of these guys that think they're training to be pro, or they have the aspiration to go race in Europe, but they don't. You never see them out doing a 6 hour training. So, like, I mean, you kind of just have to ride your bike a lot.
What do you think is the disconnect there?
It's hard. People don't like doing hard things.
I love that. Is that just something innate in you that you like this challenge, or you're like, was there a point in your life where you're like, I'm going to be a pro cyclist, I'm going to do anything that I have to do to make this happen?
I mean, the way I see it is, like, I don't love being in Europe. I don't really like being away from home. The racing's super hard, so I know that I have these 10 years of my life that I'm going to be a bike racer, and if I'm going to sacrifice all this to be in Europe and to travel and be away from home and not eat the things I want to eat, I might as well do it 100%, because if you're doing it 80%, you're still over there and you're suffering. You're just not at the front of the race. So take this time and go all in to try and be the best and enjoy the rewards when it's done.
That actually kind of leads me into one of the topics I wanted to hit, but how we never see you doing altitude camps over in Europe. It's always either in Colorado or New Mexico or Tucson. So, how did you work that out with the team with being able to do that, and what are some of the benefits of why you think that works so well for you?
Yeah, I think it took a few years to gain the trust of the team that, like, hey guys, I'm going to skip the tour camp and do it on my own. But I always show up in shape after I've been here, and I mean, everyone knows how well you train at home. Whether it's, I mean, everyone's home is their home, and I can be here. I can control my food. I know the route's perfect. In Tucson, I have a group ride every weekend. I got my dad here to drive the scooter. I can just control everything so perfect that I don't need that extra support. And the team trusts that I show up fit, and I always make sure that, like, yeah, really appreciate that they allow me to do this, because a lot of teams don't. And just know that it's my responsibility to be professional and be ready to race. And I mean, I live at 2,100 meters, so why would I go stay in a hotel in Sierra when I can be at home?
Right. Yeah, and I just love that about your training is just seeing you train in Colorado all the time, because a lot of Americans, they just spend all the time in Europe, and it's like I think you're you're the most American rider out there, and especially now that you're riding the front with the US jersey like a flaming eagle, it's just like it's perfect.
Yeah, I think it's hard for a lot of guys, because it's like beat into you even with the national team as a junior that, like, you have to live in Europe and you have to be in Girona or you have to be in Nice to be professional. I mean, for some people maybe that's true, but I mean, for me, I don't. I handle the travel quite well, and I think it's also a special situation being that I live at altitude. I think you see with the Colombian and the Ecuadorian riders, they also Bernal's always his best after he comes from home. Same with Carb has all these guys. It's not so much even just being in the US, it's just being where you're comfortable, and for me that's here.
What about like the terrain? So obviously if you had to do an altitude camp in Sierra Nevada, you just see these guys coasting downhill for like the first hour of the ride. And to me, I see that and I'm like, that just seems like a waste of time. And obviously when you're training in Colorado, you just rail it at 300 watts the whole day. Is that another benefit you think for you, especially with your physiology?
Yeah, that's another thing I have beef with when I have to train in Europe. You spend so much time not pedaling, and it's just so frustrating, and you're going through towns and all this. And I decided a few years ago that like I should do most of my endurance rides as flat as and try and pedal the whole time, because I think even if it's an easy zone one ride, I think it's a completely different stimulus if you do 6 hours on a flat with that 35K an hour average. It's closer to the race and you're always on it, rather than doing the super nice loop in the mountains. But like you say, you do a 6 hour ride and you're not pedaling for 2 hours of it.
Right.
I also really don't like training in a group, so that's another reason to skip the training camps.
You and me are so similar, except your FTP is like 100 watts higher, but other than that, man.
What is it about the groups? Is it just like you can't dictate what you're doing, and you're kind of when you have to like rotate back, you're like, oh, dude, I'm coasting back here.
Yeah, you're just back there coasting, and like I mean, you're riding at 200 watts in the wheel, just like getting hungry and snacking, and I don't know. I go really OCD on my training. Like I want the intervals to be perfect. I want the route to be perfect. I don't want a bunch of stop time. Like I get on the bike, and I mean for that's my job, and I don't need all the extra around it, and I don't need other people around me to motivate me to go hard. Like I go the hardest alone, and like I said here, I can do a 6 hours where I never stop pedaling, and then also go and meet the scooter and finish with an hour behind the scooter, so you get the speed. And I don't really feel I miss anything by not training with six other guys.
I was going to ask you about that scooter. So is it just the leg speed, and is it something about the actual speed, or can you tell us about that? What do you feel like you really get from that?
Yeah, I think especially now that we go so fast, and it's kind of a similar to the idea of the low cadence is like high power at 60K an hour feels a lot different than the same power at 30K an hour. And it's also I do it in a loop here where there's some small rollers, and I just have it stay pinned, and basically the workout is to make it over those. And I think it really simulates that being in the bunch, because the speed of the World Tour bunch right now is insane, and if you're not used to being able to ride that 450 or whatever on a flat road at 60K an hour, you're gonna have some problems.
It's hard to like calculate. My brain's like, wait, what did he just say? What do you have? Was there a point when you started to feel comfortable, or like, are there nerves when that's happening, or is that just like this is where I go to work and I'm used to it now?
In the bunch or behind the scooter?
In the bunch.
My biggest weakness probably is that I'm like quite nervous in the bunch. I really don't like it when it's a full group. I quite prefer when the speed's high and it's all lined out. It feels a lot safer for me. I definitely really struggle if it's one of these easy stages and then you have to set up the sprint with a full complete bunch in the positioning fight. I much prefer these hard starts like you saw on the tour this year, where it's 2 hours up and down, but you're all in one line and the race is really on. I'd much rather that.
Leon, you had a zone 2 question, I think, too.
Yeah. So one thing I've also noticed, kind of similar to the whole coasting thing, is a lot of, especially European pros, will kind of more so used to like piddle around at like 50% of FTP, and we see this becoming a more common thing that we talked about in one of our UAE videos, but just that it seems like pros are riding zone 2 higher now. And is that something that you found personally works well for you? And have you like tried riding at a lower percentage of FTP for your endurance rides, or like is that
Like,
just
what zone two do you get? Everyone's got a different zone two.
You tell us.
yeah? What zone 2 do you?
I mean, are we talking about like the like Fat Max UAE version of zone two, or like a
If
easy
you
endurance?
if you go out for like just 6 hours, just like straight endurance, what percentage are you usually targeting of FTP?
Percentage? I don't know. I normally ride at like 280, 290.
Okay.
So it's you're pushing, but also I mean the heart rate stays controlled, and
Yeah.
it's more just to make sure the heart rate doesn't get. I guess I would call it a zone one. Would be how my training schedule is structured, but yeah, it's definitely pushing. I used to do it lower, but then also do it low carb, and that just was miserable, and I didn't really feel like it did anything for me. So now if I do a 6 hour ride, I am it's right around that 280, 290, but then properly fueled.
Right. That's one thing we've really noticed about my theory is, as to compared to maybe 10, 15 years ago, we've seen pros riding harder and harder in zone two. And I think that's always been the best way to train. People just couldn't sustain it because they weren't fueling enough on the bike.
And we don't have those easy days anymore. I mean, in the tour, I think there was probably 2 normal sprint days where you would have had the super low power, and I had to pull those days anyways, so I didn't even have them. But yeah, I think we just have such a high raw average power every day now that if you can't handle the load, you're going to be in trouble.
You mentioned that would be a zone one for you. So can you give us a zone breakdown, or how do like workouts come across to you?
So yeah, I guess in my head, the zone one would be that like keep the heart rate pretty low, just cruise all day, and then we would do like fat max or whatever you want to call it, endurance plus, whatever would be that like 340, 350 for me, and then just the sub threshold, the 4x6 like you were talking about, like 400 build to 420, and then I think we got my threshold set when I'm at altitude around 430, which would be a sea level of like 440, 450, somewhere around there.
Sick. What about any you've talked a lot about your training, but like any bro science that you're like, I just know this thing works. It's this hot dog that I ate at the gas station. Like, there's no data, but you just feel, and you kind of alluded to this in the cadence work, and maybe that's the answer. But anything else you just think, man, I don't know what this is, but this works for Quinn Simmons.
For me, it's definitely like in the winter, it's the group ride on Saturday. Nice 7 hour, like I'll ride an hour in, do like 4 hours full race pace, and then ride home for 7. And then if it's here in the summer, I'll do kind of a similar. I'll do 5 hours and then finish with a 2 hour group ride. And like it's the same. Like once you are able to hit those high numbers, 6, 7 hours into the ride, even though they feel horrible, as long as you can do the power, that's the bro science of like, okay, I'm ready to go.
When you're going in this group ride, you could just ride away from people, I'm assuming. So you're getting a little tired beforehand, you're like playing nice with people and just blast them at the end, or how do you use that group when you're the strongest guy by a long shot, I'd assume?
Just leave my bike set up quite slow, bar bags, big tires, and just ride. Like especially in the winter on the shootout, there's enough strong, other Conti guys and a few World Tour guys plus some gravel people that these they can be pretty strong for 30 minutes, and if it's falls flat into a headwind and you just want to pull as hard as you can can destroy yourself at will. So I pretty much I just go and I go as hard as I can and make myself super tired, and then hope someone's attacking me and use that to use that as that like little extra dig.
I love that. What about anything you'd mentioned the low carb that was not for you? Anything else that you've done before that was like, this is not working. I need to not do this. Anything that's maybe not slowed you down, but just maybe the lifting you kind of
Yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah, I took out the lifting. I was on a kick for a while where I got on the 30-minute run in the morning plan that we all seem to be doing for a bit. That I don't really even know why I did that.
I
Yeah,
love that, dude.
yeah. The fasted recovery rides got thrown out really quick. Yeah,
Sounds
just I
terrible.
don't know really anything. I don't know. This year I really just stopped doing anything extra or weird, and I just went back to train hard and eat a lot. Like I stopped any game. I don't take ketones anymore. I don't do any of that stuff.
Any other supplements? Just straight up food?
I mean, just your basic like fish oil, iron, that type of supplement, but nothing crazy. And I just track the food from the nutritionist to make sure we're still hitting the weight goals. But I also switched that instead of having the nutritionist give me like full meals, I just get what I need for the day, and then I can decide what I want. And I had one kick where I did like 6 months without eating sugar off the bike, which is, again, I don't really know why I did that because it was not a super great way to live. And yeah, now, I mean, if I have 700 calories left at the end of the day, I'll go to City Market and buy a cake or something.
This is gonna wreck a lot of people. They're just like, wait a minute, hold on a second. I like that. Leonard, do you have any other questions? I think, man, Quinn, you hit on so many things that just eye-opening for people to adapt to their own training. Leonard, do you have any other ones hanging around there?
I think a big distinction that I see and hear about your training compared to many others is you're kind of like riding the limit of what you're capable of, like day in, day out. And has there ever been a time where you've gone over that limit? And like, how did you figure out that you were doing too much? And what was that limit?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I go over it quite often actually, but like I also don't think that, I don't have this like crazy talent that a lot of these guys have. I just am really able to squeeze the most out of myself. And I mean, sometimes you do have to go over that limit, but often it's important, like I can feel it. You can go out on the ride and you can tell like, okay, yeah, like I'm done. But then you take 3-4 days easy after, and then typically I'm flying after this. So I quite like actually to take the training block to where, hopefully it's the third week when it's planned that you're almost done. And I'll do, like my last block when I'm approaching it is I'll do something like 3 rides where they're all 6 to 7 hours and just really, really finish yourself. And then, not be afraid to take 4 coffee rides after. And then normally things are quite good because, I mean, you see us, we do our best values in the last week of a Grand Tour. So why can't you take that same mentality into training? Because I mean, we have to be ready to do it. If you look at my file from the Worlds last year, if you're not training like this, you're not going to be able to do that. You can't just suddenly do a 7,000 kilojoule race if you've never done a 7,000 kilojoule training. It's just not going to work. You're also not going to make it through the last week of a Grand Tour if you're 75 kilos and you're not used to climbing tired.
So that's so interesting. So you put out the best numbers the third week, and most other guys do too in the tour. I never would have guessed that.
I mean, I don't want to speak for the other guys, but for me personally, and you do hear it a lot, that maybe not the super sharp, like 1 minute, 30 seconds, whatever, but my 3 best 1 hour powers ever have all come the last week of the Vuelta and then the last week of the 2 tours I've done. So I've finished 3 Grand Tours, and all 3 of my 1 hour record came the last week of those Grand Tours.
That's wild. And you mentioned 3 weeks. Do you usually do 3-week training blocks and just hammer it that last week big time, like you said?
Yeah, typically that would be the progression, would be like 3 weeks and then a bit of rest into the race.
Sick. Land, you got anything else?
How many calories of cornflakes do you do in the morning? Just curious.
Oh. Let's see. So, yeah, well, I'll check. I'll see what I'm having tomorrow. 1 second here.
Do you use like a basic app like MyFitnessPal, or do you guys have a Lidl truck thing, or the nutritionists have something special you got to use?
We have one from the team, but then when I'm in the US, I just copy from the nutritionist what I need, but I use FitnessPal to just scan everything in easily. Tomorrow for training breakfast, I will have 120 grams of cornflakes initially with breakfast, and then another 80 grams right before the ride, plus a bunch of other stuff. It's a 1,450 calorie breakfast tomorrow.
Let's go. What's the session tomorrow?
The strength efforts that we were talking about.
Sick.
With 5 hours, yeah.
Dude, well, hopefully I can buy some gas station food out at a shootout.
Yeah.
Man, you're a super approachable World Tour rider. I was actually, when we first started chatting on Instagram, people had requested you on the podcast. And I don't know if you remember this because it was like a year ago. I said, I don't know Quinn. I have no connections to this guy. And that day, who do I see screaming down Lemon? Quinn Simmons. And you can't miss you. So I was like, I'm just going to throw a wave up. You're like, yo. And I was like, dude, that guy's super friendly. And then I saw you out by the caverns. And I'm like, this is weird. Now he's going to think I'm like following him. And I'm riding back to my buddy's house. I'm like, me again. You're like, what's up? I was like, all right, let's see if I'll come on the pod. This is like serendipity. So,
That's
yeah,
funny.
man, it was awesome to see you out there.
You can I always think that the more professional guys are, the more friendly they are on the bike. Like you're almost never going to see a World Tour guy just blow by and not wave. It's always going to be some like gravel influencer that's going to be out there being cranky.
Yeah. So Tyler's the only other Stites was the only other guy I saw out there, and he was super friendly. So yeah, you might be onto something there.
It's in. Yeah. Keep track next time. The World Tour guys will be much nicer than anyone in the Contis.
That's all right. You guys heard it out there. Everybody better start waving, be nice like Quinn, spread the love to the fellow cyclists. Man, thank you for coming on. I know you're super busy. We really appreciate your time, and good luck with the rest of the season. A lot of people will be rooting for you. Great to see you in the Stars and Stripes, just tearing it up. And
Thank you.
yeah, man, appreciate it.
Tucson, I guess.
Yes, till Tucson. Last time I was injured, I was just kind of diddling around. So hopefully I can get to the shootout because everybody talks about it, and it would be fun to just see you guys go crazy.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, man. See ya.